Well, hello there, my friend. Thank you so much for joining me today in this little kind of strange little Q&A we're going to do. I get questions all the time on my YouTube channel and also on Facebook, and people message me questions and email me questions, and I do my best to try to answer their questions when they send them in to me. But a lot of them are really good questions that I think a lot of people could benefit from. And it might be a question you've had in the past or have right now. So I'm going to just go through kind of a bunch of questions that I thought were really good and answer them for you. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. If my questions spur any questions, enter those in the chat too, and I'll see if I can answer all of them here this evening at 5 o'clock. So waiting for some people to join. Hello, thanks for joining. So I'm just going to dive right in and start asking and then answering some questions. So if anything pops up in your mind or whatever, just throw it in the chat. I'll look over every now and then and see if I can keep up with any new questions, and we'll just answer these ones that I've prepared. So, okay, so question number one is, do I ever mix glue in with my Floetrol? And I have tried that in the past, but I don't do it anymore. I keep the two very separate. So, hey, Donna, thanks for joining us. Hey, Linda, thanks for stopping by. So, I just didn't find very good results. I didn't get very good results when I mixed the Floetrol and the glue together. So now I just keep them separated. I'll just use glue by itself as a pouring medium, and I'll use Floetrol by itself as a pouring medium. I like them both a lot, but I just don't really like them combined together. So I don't really see, I've gotten some good paintings from them, but I just don't see the need for having both of them. I think each has great characteristics on its own, but combined, I don't really like it. So that's question number one. Question number two, I thought this was an interesting one, is what does hue mean? And hue, sometimes you'll see on paint tubes. Oh, I should have grabbed the paint tube before that, like cobalt blue, or it will say ultramarine blue hue or something like that. I wonder if I have one that I can quickly see here. I don't see one just jumping right out at me. But basically, what a hue means, and I had this question for a long, long time, going way back to when I was using oil paints and stuff and watercolors. But hue basically means color. It's just a fancy word for color. So what a hue means on like a tube of acrylic paint is if they have a cobalt blue hue, it just means it's a man-made version of a organic cobalt pigment. That's basically it. It's the same intensity and color as like a cobalt blue would be. And like cobalt blue, by the way, is kind of an expensive pigment. Hey, Tracy, and thanks for joining us. So that's what hue means. It's just basically a fancy word for color. So don't let that bother you. It's just a man-made version of an organic pigment. And actually, hue is using the hue pigments is often better. They're much more affordable, and they're less dangerous actually, because like cobalts and cadmiums, all those things are heavy metals. So, and you don't want those on your skin. They can kind of leach into your bloodstream. So even acrylics, they use the same pigments as oil paints do. So that's what hue means, if you've ever wanted to know. And let's see, what's up next? Do I ever use linen canvas? I thought this was a kind of an interesting question too. And I don't use linen canvas for acrylic pouring. Linen is a much more expensive type of canvas you can buy. I used linen a whole lot when I was doing oil painting, but I don't use linen for acrylics. Linen is much more, it's used widely with oil paints, but I would say not as much with acrylics. So, but you could use linen. I mean, if you wanted to, it's a much more professional, higher end type of canvas, but it's kind of overkill for acrylic pour painting. So that's what linen canvas is. If you've ever wanted to know that, I'm sure you have wanted to know that. Okay, and this one's kind of a quick, tricky one, is how do I avoid muddy colors? And this is kind of a big question, and it's very complex, and there's a whole lot of reasons why we get muddy colors, but I'm going to share kind of the two big tricks to avoid them, kind of two big ones. So the first one would be to not use complementary colors in your color scheme. Complementary colors are like yellow and purple, or red and green, or blue and orange are the complements. And when they mix together, they create a neutralized version of the two colors, which can oftentimes, depending on the blue or the orange, or depending on the actual color you're using, can be kind of a muddy looking grayish brownish color. And some, it's not as saturated and bright. And a lot of people think that's, unattractive. And it can be, especially if, with paint pouring, we have very little control about how they mix together in the cup. So if you have like a red right on top of a green, you're going to get a lot of blending, and they're going to be kind of fairly muddy colors. So one way to avoid that is just don't use those colors together in the cup, and just go with more of a analogous color scheme, which would mean you're kind of working on one section of the color wheel, like you would maybe use yellow and orange and red. Those colors all work well together. Or you're using blues into purples, all work great together. Things like that. So, hi, thanks for joining us. So that's one way to stay away from muddy colors, is just don't use complementary colors or colors that are across each other on the color wheel, or even close to each other, like yellow and if you use yellow and blue, they're not direct complements, but they're going to make green, a lot of green. So that's one way to stay away from mud. Another way is, if you want to use those colors together, is to use a barrier color in your cup. So I did this a lot when I was doing a series of yellow and blue paintings. I didn't want a lot of green mixed in there. I wanted to keep the yellows and the blues separate. So I would fill maybe the bottom half of the cup with all my different yellows, and then I'd put white, and then maybe even a gold or something, or a white and some kind of a barrier color. White is a good color to use for that. And then I'd add the blues, all the blues I wanted, at the very top, but not in equal amounts. So I would have a lot of yellow and then maybe a little bit of blue. And then when you pour it out, that barrier color, that white in the middle, kind of keeps things from blending too much together. Yes, absolutely. Facebook user just said, I separate them with white. Exactly. That's like a barrier color. So that's the second way. If you want to use those kind of colors, the complementary, because they're very stunning together, they have a lot of contrast, and they're very, a lot of color vibration happening when you have complements together. So that's another way to separate them, and try to avoid the mud. And it's not like 100% going to work every time. You're still going to get some blending, but that's one way to minimize the amount of mud you might get. Okay, so but there's a lot of ways to avoid mud. There's a lot of reasons for it, but those are two good ways. All right, what's next? Here's one that I've answered many times. What do I use to do my swipes, like as my swiping tool? And I use a couple different things. My favorite swiping tool is something like this. And this is a piece of acetate. It's like a thin piece of plastic acetate, and I make this little swiping tool with it. I use some foam core and some tape, and it makes it very easy to kind of lay this on our canvas and just swipe it across. So I love using a swiping tool like this. You could also make one out of, if you don't have any acetate laying around, if you go to like the dollar store or an office supply store and get some clear file folder dividers. They're like those thin plastic dividers you put in your notebooks. You can make them out of that. And this is a very thin type of plastic, very similar to the acetate. And they work really good too. So like the dollar store is a good place to find them, or Office Depot, any kind of office store. So that's one. These swipe tools are what I like a lot. The other thing I like to use is the damp paper towel. That's a very popular swiping tool. But one thing I like to use instead of just a regular paper towel, I like to use the blue shop towels. They're much more durable and they won't break apart on you as easily. And I find they don't have as much texture as well. So you get kind of like a very, a better kind of it's just, to me, it's a better, I lost the word. The word is gone. A better material to swipe with. Let's see. Okay. Thanks, Tracy. Thank you. Here's a question or comment. Let's see. I've actually printed off a color wheel and I keep it close by when choosing colors for my pours. It's a great reference, and avoid getting muddy colors or just mixed up colors. Yes, absolutely. Color wheels are fantastic to keep handy and nearby you when you're mixing up your paints. But I don't have any blue shop towels close by, but I like those blue ones. You can get them at Home Depot, or I'm sure you can get them at Lowe's or Walmart too. But I like those a lot. So, okay, so those are my swiping tools. And let's see, what else? Can you use something other than push pins or my hooks to put on the bottom of my canvas? I've gotten that question several times, and you can use a lot of different things. I love the hooks and the push pins. For me, they work great. But if you don't want to bother with them or mess around with them, you can use a lot of different stuff. You could use these small oven racks, it's like an oven cooling rack to put your like muffin tin on or something, or a cookie tray when you pull it out of the oven. Those work really good. And it'll let the paint kind of drip through them. You could also use just regular like sticks, like wooden strips. If you go to the Home Depot and find some thin wood strips and lay those down, and just something to elevate your canvas up off of your table or your drying surface, wherever you put your canvas to dry. I don't recommend using like cups, like under the corners, because every time you lift your canvas to tilt it, the cups are going to fall off, and it's just a big old mess. So if you're going to use something, I suggest getting something heavier, that, when you lift your canvas to tilt and then put it down, it's not going to disrupt everything you have underneath it. So, but those little racks work really well, or just some like wooden strips, something like that. I like my hooks though, and my push pins. So that's kind of what I use. I pretty much use that for everything. So, okay, next up, I've gotten this one, and I think this is an interesting question, which is, what's the easiest technique? Well, that's a tough question because they're all kind of easy, but they're all, kind of challenging, right? So I'd say the flip cup is probably the easiest technique, as far as you just layer your cup and just dump it on the canvas. But it's also kind of the most unpredictable technique because you never quite know what's going to happen under there. Whereas like the ring pour or a straight pour, that takes a little bit more dexterity because you have to kind of hold your cup still as the paint's dribbling. And if you want to, do the little swirls to get the rings, the really pretty rings, that's a little tougher, but your results are usually a little more predictable, right? So you can kind of get better results more often than like a flip cup is really random. So I'd say those two probably are the easiest. Flip cup, ring pour. but you know, there's pluses and minuses to those techniques as well as all techniques. They all have their own little kind of challenges and little tricks to them. So, okay, what else? What else do we have here? So, if you have any questions, throw them up in the comments. And let's see. Oh, this is a good one. And this one I see causes a lot of confusion. Is a base coat the same as a pillow? And the answer is no. When I talk about a base coat, or when I hear other people talking about a base coat, that's like a thin layer of paint kind of spread on your canvas. And the reason for that is it just makes the paint, like the cup of paint that you pour or flip on there, easier to move around the canvas. So it's relatively thin, and it kind of covers most of the canvas. At least I like to cover most of the canvas with my base coat. A pillow is a really thick, it's a fairly thick kind of puddle of paint. And it's mostly used for the bloom technique. And because, you know, Shelley kind of coined that phrase pillow because it's necessary for the bloom to kind of spread the bloom out the way she does and everyone does, the way it's spread out. So that's a very different thing than a base coat. But I see it used all the time interchangeably, but they're not quite the same thing. And sometimes I put a little puddle of paint on top of my base coat when I'm doing like a floating cup or an open cup, but I don't really call that a pillow. I guess you could call it a pillow. I just find that confusing. I just call it a little puddle of paint, and you're going to put your open cup in it. It's just a little extra paint. It's not like this kind of thick layer that we need with the pillow paint and the bloom. So hopefully that makes sense. Because yeah, that can be very confusing, especially for new people. Like, what the hell's a pillow? And so anyway, that's my answer to that one. So, okay, what is next? Okay, this one is also, I see a lot of conflicting information, and I think a lot of confusion about this. And this is, do I have to wait 4 to 6 weeks for my paint to dry before I can put a varnish on top? And the answer, in my opinion, is no. 4 weeks is a long time for painting to dry. Unless there's an absolutely massive amount of paint on that canvas, it should be dry usually within 2 weeks. Especially if you're using like the canvas coverage cheat sheet and like the amount of paint I recommend, your painting should be dry 2 weeks maximum, like probably more like a few days actually. But unless you're using a huge amount of paint, and that's not good for a lot of reasons, you shouldn't need to wait like 4 weeks. That's a really long time. I would maybe wait a week or two. Like I'd give it 2 weeks, sure, because we are dealing with like drying and then the curing, and everyone gets confused about what's curing mean. And it's basically just all the paint underneath the top layer needs to be dry as well. But that shouldn't take, weeks and weeks and weeks. The curing time is not, you don't need weeks and weeks and weeks, in my opinion. So I don't usually varnish stuff right away. So I usually give it at least a couple weeks anyway, because I'm not in a huge rush to put a top coat on anything. But another little test would be, if you're wondering, if my painting is dry, here's just a painting I did a little while ago, I think last week. You could feel the back. And if the back feels like the back of your canvas, if it's at all cool to the touch, it's still drying. So that can be an indicator that if it feels at all cool at all to the touch, or any type of like, if you feel any kind of moisture, then it's definitely not dry. But just if it's feeling cool, let it go, because it's not dry enough. So give it another a few days, and then you could try that test again to see if it's dry or not. But in my experience, 2 weeks should be plenty of time for your paint to dry. Yes, Donna says she usually waits 2 weeks to dry. Thanks, Donna. And this is a great point right here. I find paint drying depends on what part of the world you live in, the paint thickness, and your environment, time of year. That's a great point. If you're in a very cool, like wet environment, like it's cold outside and raining, that will slow down your drying for sure. So yes, thank you for pointing that out. That's an excellent point. But yeah, and just kind of a regular, I live in California, so of course it's warm here usually all the time and very little rain. But I would say 2 weeks should be plenty of time, usually in general. Here we go. Here's a good question. What size canvases are easier to pour on, small or large? Well, that's a double-sided question. Smaller canvases are much easier to pour on, but you get better results with larger canvases because you have more real estate to work with. So I don't like to use anything smaller than an 8x10. I think that's pretty much the minimum size to get a decent looking painting. And even that is fairly small. What I like to do normally, like when I'm just making paintings for me or kind of doing my paintings I want to do, like a 12x16 is about the smallest I will work. My favorite sizes are 12x16, 16x20, I think is my favorite size. 18x24, I really like that size. And those get more difficult the larger you get because now you're tilting this big canvas and your arm span has a lot to do with it. So if you can't handle like a 16x20 or an 18x24 is about as big as I can hold and tilt and stretch comfortably. Once you get larger than that, you have to use a table or some kind of other tool to kind of help you. It's just too big to grab. But I would say if you're just starting out, start with like 8x10s. They're also more affordable, and get comfortable with those, and then move up to maybe 11x14s or 12x16s. Those are easier to handle. And if you have my cheat sheet, my canvas coverage cheat sheet, you'll know how much paint you need to use for each of those sizes. But then, my favorite sizes are like 16x20, 18x24, because you just have a lot more room for amazing things to happen with the paint. So I hope that answers your question. That's a good question. Oh, Donna says, please be safe with the wildfires. Thank you very much, Donna. They're quite a distance away from me, so, but yeah, I'm all too familiar with those. They're terrible. So, hi there from Australia. Thanks for joining us. So again, if you have any questions, throw them in the comments. I'm just running through a list of stuff here. And where are we? Let's see. Okay, here's another one. Like, do I ever pre-mix my paint in bottles to use? That's a very popular thing to do. And yes, I do that sometimes. I have a couple here. I've got a silver and a red. This is a pyrrole red, and a purple. This is a metallic purple, which I love. I do this quite a bit. I haven't done it in a while, but these are great to use. These bottles are relatively inexpensive. I get them on Amazon, and they come in a pack of, I think, a dozen or so, and they're not that bad price-wise. But you have to get good ones, and you have to make sure that they have really nice threads on the cap. If you get the really cheap ones, those caps can blow off really easily, and you'll have paint everywhere. And then, that's, a huge mess, but then you just wasted a whole bunch of paint and money. So it's worth getting quality bottles. But what I like to do, And these are so convenient. If you have a bunch of colors mixed up, you can just grab them, give them a shake, and then you can start painting like right away. You don't have to sit there and mix. So they're very convenient. What I like to do is I will mix up a batch of like the colors I use most often. I use silver a lot. I use this red a lot. Purple I use a lot. It's my favorite color. But then other colors I'll use white, black, Payne's gray I use all the time. So you can mix like a batch of your favorite colors. And then any other colors you want to add to that, you can mix those up like on the spot, but it'll save you a lot of time. So if that's kind of like if you don't have a lot of time to paint, this can be a great way to just get into painting quickly without doing a lot of all the prep of mixing. So great question there. And what else do we have? I'm just checking the comments. No other questions in the comments. Let's see. Angela asks, will you ever critique a painting from your audience? Yes, I will. I do that with students of my class, my foolproof pouring class. I will definitely give you advice and critiques. I find it is very tricky. And so I like to do it more one-on-one instead of out in the whole public for everyone to see, unless it's in a private group and everyone is cool in that group and we all kind of help each other and critique our paintings together and we're all like-minded. Some of the other groups out there, like the big groups that, that can be a little risky, and then feelings can get easily hurt because it all depends on what you're asking to be critiqued and the comments that come back. And oftentimes, if you're not very clear, comments can be misunderstood and taken the wrong way. So it's a tricky thing to do, critiquing work like online with just comments and things. Like video is a much better way, but that's a very one-on-one type of situation. But that's a great question. Another thing about comments is a lot of times, there's not a lot you can comment on, and you have to be very specific with what you want critiqued in your painting. Like, do these colors work well together? Is like a good question. Not like, is my painting good? That's a very obtuse question, and it can be taken a million different ways, and it all depends on who's looking at it. But so you want to have a question that is, more specific. Like, why did the colors do this, or how could I have improved the composition, or things like that. More specific questions, and then you can get more specific answers as well. I find a lot of the people like to just post their paintings and would say, "What do you think?" And sometimes the paintings are great, but of course, they know they're great. They just want to get positive feedback, which is fine. I love that. I do that. But other times the paintings are not good, or it's your first painting. And I oftentimes see people post their very first painting and just say, "What do you think?" And of course, if it's your very first painting, it's probably not going to be very good. It's, I don't want to be harsh about that, but it takes practice to get good at this, like any other art form. But I think they just want quick results and immediate gratification. So, and that's just not the way to approach any type of art form. So that's, critiquing stuff it's very tricky. It's a tricky thing to do, no matter, regardless of the style or the medium. It's a very delicate situation. So I hope that answers your question, Angela. That's a good one, though. But yes, I am open to it, by the way. So, so don't be afraid about it. This is a good question. Donna asked, what is the best red? Some look pink. Yes, this is a very good question. Red is a very tricky color. it is very difficult to make really vibrant reds. A lot of them, if the pigments are lower quality, or we're using like craft paints, I don't like using craft paint reds because they're very washed out and they're not vibrant at all. Because red is a kind of expensive pigment to make. So yeah, they will look kind of dull and washed out before you do anything to them. But there are a couple reds that are really vibrant and really bright. This one happens to be my favorite red. This is Pyrrole Red. And this is actually funny. My friend Tracy is on here, or was on here. But she just posted a little thing about Pyrrole Red. And I've been using this for years, but they based this color off of Ferrari Red. So this is like as rich a red as you can get. It's like the reddest red ever. I love it. And it's super vibrant. This is the color I like to use the most, or the brand, is Liquitex Basics. Makes a fantastic Pyrrole Red. But I think Amsterdam also makes a great Pyrrole Red. So with reds, you want to spend a bit more money and get a better quality one, because it'll be more vibrant. The other problem with red is you have to be very careful of the colors you mix with it. If you mix it with white, you're immediately going to, dilute it, and you're going to get pink. So that's kind of hard to do. It's we'd love to see like a really vibrant red next to a really white, but with paint pouring, it's very difficult because they will mix together and you'll get a lot of pink. So that's a tricky one. I like to use red with blacks. Golds are great, but you can try it and use reds and then have that barrier color like we were talking about earlier. So have like red and then maybe gold, then go to white, and that'll kind of separate the white from the red. Great question though. So Pyrrole Red, that's my favorite. Let's see. Let me go up here. Hey, Navala, thanks for joining us. Let's see. Oh, here's a good question. Do you use dimethicone in your paints or silicone oil to produce cells? I use both of them, actually. I like two different products, and I'll share them with you. The dimethicone, let me grab them here. So the dimethicone I get in this, the coconut milk anti-breakage serum. This is by OGX. It's like a hair product. It's like smells like coconut, so it smells good. I get this you can get it at Walmart. You can get it at I think I've seen it at grocery stores. I'm sure you can get it on Amazon. But the trick with getting this stuff is you have to look at the ingredients. This particular brand, the very first ingredient is dimethicone, and that's what we're after. And this is a great product. It acts very, very similar to the 100% silicone I'll show you in a second. But this is a good one. I like this one. I use this one all the time. The other one I use is the Spot On treadmill belt lubricant. And then they rebranded their silicone and renamed it Precision Pouring Oil. Wow. But the nice thing about this is it comes with a nice needle tip attachment. But this is the silicone I would use. This is a very popular one. You probably have seen this exact same thing, only with a green label. That's the treadmill belt lubricant version. But the yellow version is the same exact stuff. So it's 100% silicone. It works really well. Either one works just fine for me. I get very similar results out of both of them. So it's just kind of whatever I feel like. I haven't really noticed much of a difference. One thing I have noticed though is the dimethicone, the OGX hair serum, is much less greasy on the final painting. So that might be a big bonus for you. The 100% silicone, the Spot On, you can see it. You can see the greasiness way more in that than with the OGX. At least that's been my experience. So, but that's a great question. Hey, Michelle, thanks for stopping by. And let's see, what else here? Carolyn asks, my husband wants to do a painting with orange, yellow, and red for him. Will those colors work well together? Absolutely. Those are fantastic colors. They are analogous, so they're kind of right next to each other on the color wheel. One thing I would suggest is pick colors that have a range of value. So, like if I was going to do that painting, like an orange, yellow, and red, what would I do? Well, first of all, for a yellow, I'd probably use gold because I love gold. For a red, I'd probably use pyrrole red. But then we need some kind of a dark color in there because we want some contrast. And all those colors are fairly similar value-wise, so they're going to all kind of look very much the same. So one thing I might do is mix a really light yellow. So I might take white and then I might add a little bit of like cadmium yellow to make a yellow that's much lighter in value. And then I might want to make a like an orange, like you could use regular orange too, like just a straight orange, but then you maybe take the orange and make a dark orange. So maybe take orange and I'm just, making stuff up as I go here, but like burnt sienna, which is a really dark red, and mix those together, or just use burnt sienna by itself. And then you'd have a really dark value and kind of a nice range of values. I like to have like a light, a darkish dark, and then a couple in the middle. So hopefully that helps you, but that's a great color scheme to work with. I think that's going to be a beautiful painting. Let's see. What else do we have? Let's see. Angela asked, what areas can I improve my work? That's a kind of a broad question, but I'll give you a couple tips. First of all, I would focus on consistency, like focus on your painting consistency, meaning have the same amount of ingredients in all your different paints, and then make sure that consistency is similar across all your different colors. Focus on that. That's kind of the most important thing to get right at the beginning. You could focus on colors and trying different color schemes, and I would keep it simple. Go for like 2 to 3 colors, or I mean 3 to 4 colors in your paintings, and do what I was just mentioning. Pick a dark, pick a light, and then pick 1 or 2 kind of in the middle colors, and play with those. And I think so. Working on color that way, keeping it simple, but you're exploring the different values, and then you could have a black and a white, and then pick a middle color. And I mean that could be you could make all kinds of different paintings with just those 3 colors. So maybe work on those. And then probably the third thing I'd suggest is focus on tilting your paints, like when you flip your cup or do your ring pour, and you're getting ready to tilt, and slow down. Just really take your time and really watch the paint, move it around the canvas nice and slowly, and learn to control your paint more. I see that talked about very, very rarely. Everyone wants to get right into tilting and moving the paint around, but I like to take it very slowly and kind of methodically. And you're able to control and maneuver your paints much easier that way, and just have more patience. And it also helps you to kind of relax more and not be so nervous. If you get like, oh, I'm nervous, and I know a lot of students are like freaked out by tilting and they don't want to make a mistake. And don't worry about mistakes, just practice the process. So just practice mixing your paints, pick out some colors, practice tilting. And I'd even suggest messing some paintings up on purpose. So, if you're doing a ring pour, tilt it off all the corners and then really stretch it out, like beyond, like stretch it beyond what you think looks good, and like wreck it, basically. Because doing that, you'll really see how far you can really stretch and move the paint around. I think that's a great tip, is just, on purpose, just dump your paints off and wreck them, and just see what's possible with the paints, I think is a great tip. So hopefully that helps you, Angela. Let's see, what else? Yes, Angela has, yes, this is good. I like this. Angela says, I'm very thick-skinned and really want to get better. Absolutely, that's the way to be. You need to have thick skin as any kind of an artist, whether it's a musician or any type of, painter or graphic designer, any type of creative endeavor. You got to have some thick skin, because there's always room to improve. You can always get better no matter what. And so you have to be open to that. And so you have to realize, yeah, this isn't very good. What can I do to improve it? And don't look at it as, oh, I should be, amazing, immediately, like the first try. I've watched 1,000 videos, but I haven't tried any. That doesn't matter. It's all about what you've done and what you've put into it. So yes, thick skin is fantastic. And then being open to critiques and advice and suggestions. I'm always learning new things. And I do a lot of paintings that I don't like. And people say, oh, I don't like that. And that's fine, because another thing is, not everyone is going to like your work, even if it's beautiful. Not everyone is going to see the value in it, or it's just not for them. Everyone has different tastes. So you have to take that in mind too. It doesn't mean that you're a bad artist or you did a bad painting. It just means that person, it wasn't for them. So keep that in mind as well. Everyone's different, and everyone looks at these different paintings differently. Everyone looks at the whole world differently, especially artwork. I look at paintings differently than anyone else on the planet, probably, and so do you. So, but value that. That's your, that's your sensitivities to artistry and art, and that has a lot of value. That's your opinion. And your opinion is the most important opinion to you. So just like my opinion is very important to me, yours should be to you. So don't undervalue your opinion. Okay, I hope that helps. But that's good. I like that. That's great, Angela. Let's see. Yes, this is I like to use artist quality paints for reds. Yeah, that's you really want to use a little bit higher quality red. Reds especially are kind of that's a funny pigment. So yeah, use a little bit better reds. Pyro red is a wonderful one. What else? The other thing to keep in mind is there are a lot of different reds out there. Some reds are opaque, and some reds are semi-opaque. A couple reds are translucent. So that can play into your painting as well. Pyro red is a semi-transparent, I believe. But like cadmium red, that's an opaque red. That's an organic opaque red. And then that's about it. I'm trying to think of any other reds I would recommend. And there's a ton of them out there. So, but just, play around with them. Vermilion red is another one I kind of like. It's more of an orangish red, but it's a very pretty red. So anyway, okay, so we're talking about reds. That's great. What else do we have? Yes, Donna says she never mixes red and white. Yeah, because you'll get a lot of pink mixing that way. I don't really do that either. I kind of keep my whites away from my reds. Yes, you're welcome, Doreen. Thank you for joining us. Hey, Casey. Hey, Zena. Thanks for joining us. How do you find, this is a good one. How do you find your silicone oil and the differences in the paint heaviness? Well, the silicone oil I mentioned, I think I mentioned it. I find the spot on silicone, I find this on Amazon. It's pretty easy to find on Amazon. And then this one, the coconut milk, I'm sure you could probably find this on Amazon as well, or like a grocery store or like a big box store like Target or Walmart. I'm sure has this. Just make sure to check those ingredients and make sure dimethicone is the first ingredient on there. And then as far as your second question, the difference in the paint heaviness, I don't really pay too much attention to the heaviness or the density of my colors. It's a very scientific, technical reason for getting cells, and densities all have something to play with that, a part to play. I don't spend too much time thinking about it though. I just kind of I use the colors I like, and then just see what happens. Kind of about the deepest I get into going with densities is I know white is pretty heavy. Like titanium white is pretty heavy. It's not the heaviest white. Zinc white is the heaviest white, if you didn't know that. Zinc white's also a translucent white. But titanium, so I'll often put titanium white or white in the bottom of the cup, because then when you flip it, it'll like to quantify an equilibrium and kind of sink, and then the other colors will kind of flow through it. So that's, but I don't really pay too much attention to densities and paint colors. You can go really deep into that and do a lot of like research and tests, and that would be awesome. And, eventually, that'd be fun to do, but but it all depends on, but still, if you have the perfect densities of paints all mixed up and lined up, they might not be the colors you want, So I like to go by the colors I want to use. I focus more on my color scheme, color harmonies, things like that. And I just kind of let the densities do their thing. But to finish up with that question, I'll typically put maybe a couple drops of silicone or the dimethicone oil into just a few of the colors. I usually don't put it in the white, but I'll just pick a few of the other colors, 2 or 3, and just put a couple drops in each. And that's pretty much it. I just kind of go with that and then just see what happens. You're never going to be able to know exactly or predict what's going to happen anyway. So I don't spend too much, brain power worrying about the densities all that much. Hope that answers your question though. Casey asks, what are your favorite color combinations? Wow, I could spend a long time on that one. I'll give you a couple though. One of my very favorites is to use a blue, a turquoise, a white, a gold, and then a dark color like a Payne's gray or black. That's a very, like the one right behind me, this one right here in the middle, that's very similar to that. It's kind of a very oceany color scheme. There's no real like color harmony, like a classical color harmony about that. It's just, it's more of an analogous color palette because it's all blues, or monochromatic. I mean, it's like all blues. And then you throw in like that gold, which is like a yellow. So, and that's not really a color harmony, but the gold is a nice accent color to the blues. So that's one of my favorites. Another one I like to use a lot is, what is it? Oh, just like the reds we were talking about, red. So I like to use like a red and gold, which are analogous. Black would be my dark color. And then I'll throw in like another maybe darker color, like a deep crimson color. And then maybe kind of a neutralized orangish color or a neutralized purpley color. And I like to put some neutralized colors in there just so everything is not so vibrant and bright. If you have some neutralized colors, in with your bright colors, it'll actually make your bright colors brighter, and it kind of plays off of the neutralized colors. So I always like to have some mixing and neutralized colors at work in my paintings, if that makes any sense. So that's a couple of them, but there's a lot. I mean, another one I really like, I'll give you a third one, is I like working with yellows, oranges, and then blues. But I like to have like 80% of the painting be yellows, and then 20% of it be blue. So, and that's, so we're going in, dominance. That's color dominance. We're talking about mostly one color and then a smaller amount of another one. You never want to have like a half and half with anything in artwork. You always want to have one be bigger or greater than the other one, or something off balance or off, nothing ever in the center. So that color palette I like a lot. So I would use, I'd use white, I'd use gold, I'd use a very light yellow, like a lemon yellow. I'd use there's a metallic yellow I really like from Artist Loft. I'd use a deep cadmium yellow deep, and those would be my yellow colors. And then I would use the white again, would be more of a barrier color. And then the blues would be maybe a turquoise blue, a Payne's gray blue, and then a medium blue. And one of my favorite blues is metallic blue from Artist Loft too. I love that color. And that's a fun, really bright, kind of cheerful palette. But you will get greens in there too. So you can't completely keep the yellows and blues apart. You will get some greens happening. But it just adds to but the greens work right alongside the yellows and the blues. That's a really fun color palette. But that's a good question. Let's see. Oh, here's one. How do you clean your canvases after using silicone dimethicone before varnishing? Wow, that's a tough one. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And I'm not, I don't use silicone a lot in lots of my paintings. So I'm not an expert. But you definitely want the painting to be completely dry. So I would wait, because we're going to be scrubbing on it. So I'd give it an extra few days, actually. That's one instance where I'd wait longer. So maybe give it an extra week. And then you want to, I kind of like to blot it out with a paper towel first and kind of wipe off what I can get off. And then I will actually just stick it under the sink and just scrub it with like a softer sponge. I wouldn't use like one of those coarse sponges, but a little softer sponge, and just start scrubbing on it with some Dawn dishwashing liquid, kind of like you're washing a pan, actually. I'm not incredibly gentle with it. Acrylics are pretty tough, so they can take it. But I just scrub it, and maybe you do that twice or 3 times, and then see what you got. Also, I would recommend using an isolation coat. Get some gold in the isolation coat product and use a very soft brush to brush on a layer of that. And then hopefully, there's no guarantees with silicone, but hopefully that would take care of it. And then you could varnish on top. But before I would do any of that, I would do some practice paintings and go through that entire process and then varnish them and see what happens. Do not do that with like a commission piece or like a really nice painting you want to do. Do it with some practice first. Get your technique down so you can repeat it a couple times and it works. Make sure it works before you move on to like a big painting or something important. And that goes with anything, even with the varnish. I would practice varnishing on sample paintings first. You really want to be able to dial in your techniques and have done it multiple times before moving on to really important pieces. So I see that come up all the time, and I just always like, oh no, I got a commission and I wrecked it. You're like, oh my gosh. And there's, sometimes there are no fixes for paintings. Sometimes it's just wrecked and there's nothing you can do. So always practice. But that's a great question. I hope that helps. I hope that helps, Barbara. Okay. Anything else? You're welcome, Casey. I'm glad you're finding the advice useful. Michelle asked, are there some colors that you use sparingly? I'm never sure which colors are going to take over the painting. That's a good point. That's a great question. Yes, some colors can definitely take over a painting, like the 24K gold from DecoArt. Yeah, you have to be careful with that one. That will, boom, that'll take over the whole thing. So that's one that can really dominate. I've noticed copper likes to do that as well. It acts kind of similar to the 24K, not as extreme, but copper can kind of do that. I think, it's a lot of people, it's kind of widely known that the satin enamel, you have to be kind of careful about how much of that you put in your paintings, oftentimes diluting it with other colors or another white. Otherwise, that can take over the whole thing. Same as with milk paint. If you use milk paint, I don't really use it anymore because it's kind of hard to find, but that can really take over a whole painting. But I haven't found that with many other colors, really, that I can think of off the top of my head. Yeah, so I'd say the 24K gold, also the Amsterdam gold, like the Amsterdam, let me grab it, like the Amsterdam Standard Series. This acts also kind of similar to the 24K, and it can kind of take over a little bit as well. But that's a good question. That's off the top of my head, what I can think of. Great question, Michelle. Yes, hey, Barbara. Yes, I am seeing questions. There's just a lot of them. I'm kind of working my way through. Let's see. Zena asks, what is the best silver? There's a couple that I really like. I think, let's see. I don't know if I have any right here within arm's reach. The Amsterdam silver I like a lot. The other silver, the Master's Touch silver, I like a lot. I'm not crazy about the Liquitex silver, the Liquitex Basics. That's probably my least favorite Liquitex color because it can get very thick and it can be very hard to incorporate in the Floetrol or the glue. That particular color, I don't know why, but I've had more problems with that silver than any other silver. DecoArt makes some beautiful silvers, like the Dazzling Metallics. They make some really, really pretty silvers. Those are the ones I like a lot. There's also, I'm sure Golden makes a bunch of awesome ones, but I don't use Golden as much as the other paints. Hopefully that answers your question, though. Off the top of my head, I'd say Amsterdam is my favorite, followed by the Master's Touch. That's a really nice silver. And those are, more affordable and easier to find. So great question, though. There's a lot of silvers. I love silver. Thank you, Navala. Let's see. Barbara asked again. Thanks. That's about what I do. Just want to confirm any other recommendations at Dawn. But I think it's the best. Yeah, it's not a very complicated process. I just get on there and I just scrub on it for a while and then rinse it and then scrub on it again and do that a couple times. Then you have to kind of let it dry, really let it dry because you'll probably get the canvas stretcher bars wet. It can be a real kind of pain in the butt. That's why one of the reasons I don't like using silicone. But yeah, it's I guess it is what it is. You're just kind of scrubbing pans, basically. Okay. Yes, you're welcome, Barbara. Teal. Navala says teal can be a bit of a bully. Yes, it can, depending on the teal, I guess, too. Yeah, teal likes to kind of dominate things also. That's a great point, Navala. Thank you. So, okay. Well, that's great questions, everybody. Let's see here. Let's see. Oh, here's another one I missed from Linda. How many metallics would you recommend in one pour? I always feel you should add some regular mixed with metallics, and some people use all metallics. I've done it both ways, Linda. I've used all metallics. I've also used, a lot of metallics with more normal colors. I think it all depends on what you're going after. Metallics can help generate cells if you're using Floetrol. So if you're after like a ton of crazy cells, using all metallics and then Floetrol could be a good way to get them. One painting that springs to mind that I did was, I think I used 5 different types of silver, like from dark silver to lighter silver. I custom mixed a bunch of them, and that one went crazy and had cells everywhere. But if you want a more kind of subtle painting, then I would maybe stick with maybe one or two metallics, and then maybe the rest of the colors, maybe three or 4. So you'd have like 6 total, maybe. And I've done many paintings like that. And then the metallics act more of a. You can see subtle hints of, the metallics kind of shimmering, and also like more flat areas with the kind of the regular colors. And so they play off each other very nicely. So one of my favorite things to do would be, gold I love it. And so I use it all the time, but gold and silver also. One of the color palettes that's so simple, but it's a great, very elegant color palette, is just white, black, gold, and silver. That's it. And you can get some amazing paintings from that. And just those 4 colors. But yeah, I'd say maybe two metallics, and then you'll be able to kind of distinguish. The metallics will look more metallic-y, and then all the other colors will be doing their thing. So you have a nice balance. I think that's good. That's probably more what you're after, is like a more balanced composition with your colors. So, okay, great question, Linda. Thank you. I gotta get a drink. All this talking. Excuse me. Okay. Navala says, excellent advice on the tilting. Thank you very much. Yes, tilting is very under talked about, but I like to talk about it a lot. Let's see, anything else? Let's see. I think that's it for the questions that have come in. Oh, Casey says, red is the biggest bully. I guess it can be, Casey. But yeah, red, it depends on the red, I guess, and how much of it you have in your cup. Yeah, red can be a bully, I guess. Thanks, Casey. Let's see. Navala wants to see Navala wants to see the multiple silver painting. I think she's seen it before. And then Michelle, I'd see it's out of the room. I'll get it. I'll post it, Navala. I'll put it in that group. I don't want to run out of the room and get it. But Michelle asked, do you have a favorite pouring style? I have a couple. I think my favorite pouring style is probably the floating cup. I think that's, I just love that one. Floating cup, and then probably the ring pour are my 2 favorites. And that's probably my most successful paintings are from those 2 styles. I do them most often, I think, but I just love those 2 styles. Also, maybe the third would be like the waterfall pour, the waterfall ring pour. I love that one. But yeah, probably the floating cup is my very favorite, my most favoritist of all. Let's see. Well, that is it for our questions. And that's it for the questions I had prepared. So unless there's anything else, I'll wait a little bit. Thanks so much for joining me. And I wanted to mention one more thing also, that I am getting close to completing the new material, the new bonus, new bonus lessons and info for the Foolproof Pouring mini course. And so if you haven't jumped into that course and it's interests you at all, I'm going to be raising the price at the end of the month. So now is the time to get it, because you get the original course and then all the new stuff that I'm going to be adding. So once I add that, I'm going to raise, or finish adding it, I'm going to raise the price. So let me see. I'll put that in the chat just in case you want to go check it out. I'll put the link to my mini course in there, and you can go check it out if you're interested in it. And here's a banner. So you can go find it at acrylicpouringacademy.com/FP-mini-course. It's a complicated link, but I put a link in there if you want to go just click it. But so just wanted to mention that. And you're all very welcome. You're welcome, Michelle. Thanks for the great questions. So thank you so much for joining me tonight and asking some awesome questions. I hope you got some, I'm losing it. I'm losing it. It's time for dinner. I hope we got some value out of our little chat tonight. And I will see you again in the next live. And I'll probably do a live just in my Facebook group on the next one. Maybe while I'm prepping for my next painting, I'll just go in there and chat, and we can talk about the colors I'm going to be using and things like that. So, and if you haven't joined that group, you can go ahead and join it. It's Acrylic Pouring Club. You can find it on Facebook. And I will see you again next time. Thanks so much, everyone. I will see you later.